Hello and welcome everyone to the Woodland Wisp. My name's Ashley and today I'm going to be exploring some different dragon and reptilian type textures in polymer clay. So I have got several different scaly type textures in both flat and raised designs and some great pairing textures to go with them. And these are all super easy to create using just your hands and a few basic and improvised tools. So before we get started, please don't forget to like, comment below, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. Let's get started. So I am starting with some basic flat textures, and for the first one I have got a clear plastic drinking straw and I have just snipped the corner of the end off here to form a nice half circle, and I am going to be using this just like a stamp. So I am just stamping a line of them straight across and then adding another and another, matching those up in the centers on each row. This is what it looks like, and these are just some nice traditional round scales and they look really nice. So for the next texture I am going to be doing the same thing using the same tool, except I am creasing the other end of this straw. So I'm going to fold it down and make a nice crease on both sides, and then I'm going to clip my end off. So now I have that same half circle, but there is a point on the bottom. And so you can use this same technique to make some pointed scales as well. And I am just going to stamp these on here the same way. Here it is. So, and you can see that I've got two different scale types here using exactly the same tool, and you can get a plastic drinking straw just about anywhere. For my next set of textures, I will be using a series of round cutters, and for the first one, I am going to use all of these. I'm going to start with the large one in the center and then progressively work my way down the line as I'm moving outwards. Now, if you don't have round cutters, I have done this with rolled up cardstock paper, pen tubes, ink tubes, just about anything that you can use to stamp a circle down. And I have several different sizes here, but this can be done with about 3 or 4, so you don't need a whole bunch of them. And again, I am just progressively moving down in size as I'm working outward on this piece. And then once I get to the last one here, I will also use that to fill in some of these empty spaces in the center left between those large circles. Here it is, and this is the one that I use most commonly when creating flat textures. You can also get a very similar effect though with just a single size circle. So if you just have one circle cutter, you can use that exactly the same way. And this is especially effective when you're using these tiny cutters. It gives a really nice look when they're used all by themselves, and it's really great for small areas, eyelids, toes, the tips of tails, things like that, for creating some extra depth and texture in those areas. It is also great for a transitioning element, in between textures or on edges of pieces where you can't quite get that texture in all the way. So this is what those look like. Here's the larger ones. And again, these smaller ones look really great by themselves. Another thing you can do with these circle cutters is to make patterned designs. So instead of placing them randomly, start with a larger one and make a nice straight line and then another one next to it. But make sure you're lining those circles up nice and even, both down and across. And then you can come back through with a tiny one and add some circles in that tiny area in between there where they meet. This is what it looks like, and you can see that this pattern is much more symmetrical and congruent, and it also looks great in dragon and reptilian type pieces. For the next few examples, I will be using this double-ended clay tool. So I have got a needle tool on one end and this kind of pointed scoop on the other end. And I am just going to be using the tip of this. So you can use anything with that kind of flat pointed end. And we just want that sort of triangle shape. And again, I am using this just like a stamp, except this time I'm starting at the bottom and moving up. So here you can see that we've got some really nice pointed scales, and I really like this tool in particular because you don't have to use the whole thing. So I'm going to do the same thing, but I am leaning it forward and only using the very tip of it. And this will create the same exact texture, but much smaller. This is what it looks like. And this particular tool, again, you can rock it, forward or backwards to make larger or smaller scale types, and they look really nice. If you don't have one of these tools, you can use one of the cuticle pusher nail tools for a very similar effect, or you can also go with a piece of paper. So this is just like the straw. I have just folded it in half and clipped off the end so that I have a little V shape here. And you can stamp this on the same way. It doesn't look quite as pleasing to the eye, but it is a very nice texture. Here that is, and the next few examples here are going to be free-handed textures. So I am using the needle end of that clay tool, and again, you can use an embroidery needle or a straight pin or a sewing needle. And I am going to start with a flat diamond texture. So I'm just making some nice straight lines that are evenly spaced and curved a little bit. And then I'm going to come back the other way. Again, keeping it nice and straight and curving it in the opposite direction and trying to keep them evenly spaced. So we have a nice diamond texture, and this is really great for larger areas or backgrounds, and it's really fast and simple to do. Now, the problem with freehanding pointed and rounded scales is maintaining regularity. So if you're doing smaller areas and using very straight lines like the pointed scales, this can be a pretty easy task. But if you're working on larger areas or doing a design where you're using curved lines, you will run into problems keeping that regularity. It's just not something that you can consistently maintain free-handed and without the use of a tool. Irregularity, on the other hand, is very easy to maintain. So if you find that you're having problems maintaining that regularity, going freehand, try doing some very irregular shapes. Consistently irregular is the best way to go for designs like this, and you can create some really unique and eye-pleasing textures this way. Here it is, and this is my favorite free-handed texture to use, but I will share a few others that you can create using some irregular lines. So again, I am just starting with some very simple line work, and you don't want them super straight. You want them kind of curved in places and trailing off. And then I'm going to come back through up here and just like brickwork, but again, very irregular. Don't worry about keeping anything the same shape or size. And now I'm going to make some more of those irregular flowing lines down here on the bottom. And I've got another texture here that's really easy to make, and I really like the way that it looks. So this time I'm making curved lines, almost like a feather. You're just gonna kind of feather them off this way. And then when we go back down the other side, I am going to point those in the opposite direction. This is what those look like. And again, both of these are really simple and fast. So they're really great for larger areas, especially when you're limited on tools. Moving on to raised textures, all of these begin with some little clay balls. So for the first one, I am using a whole bunch of different sizes, and I am just going to be placing these and then pressing them in with my finger. This is the scale technique that I use most often, and I work this into just about every one of my dragon pieces, even if I'm using other scale types, because it's a really good transition texture as well. This is what they look like, and you can put them closer together like I usually do, or you can space them out depending on what type of piece you're working on. For the next one, I have got some clay balls that are all about the same size, and I am going to press these in a little bit on the top and then pinch them right here on the other end. And I am doing another raised round scale texture. So just like the half circles, I am just kind of overlapping these and only adhering them on that top part after they're pressed down, kind of pulling them upwards. And these do have to be worked from the bottom up. And again, we've got some nice traditional rounded scales and a raised texture. For the next one, I am using those same balls, and they're about the same size as these ones, but instead of leaving them round, we are going to point just the one end. So not too much, you just want some little teardrop shapes. And once you've got several of those ready, we are working these exactly the same as the round ones. So just placing it and just pressing down that round end and lining them up appropriately so that they overlap in the center. So here we've created some really nice raised pointed scales, and I like to come through on these with my cutting tool or my poking tool and just make a line in the center of each one of those for some additional texture. Here it is. And for the next texture, we are doing the same thing that we did with this last one, but we are going to roll those points out a little bit further. So you want more of a spike shape than a teardrop, and we are going to be placing these the same way, but we're starting at the top and working our way down. So I'm just standing that spike up and then pressing it in only on the bottom. And I'm again lining those up just like we did with the rest of those scales. Here it is, and this is another really great raised texture, and it pairs really well with all of the other textures that we've explored so far as well. The last section today is pairing textures, and we are going to start with some horns. And once again, we are beginning with a teardrop shape. I did choose a larger clay ball to start with, but you're just going to roll that into a teardrop, and then we want it nice and flat on the bottom. So I am just pressing and turning that at the same time, trying to keep that round kind of teardrop shape on the top, and then I'm going to bend it over a little bit, and I like to add some texture to mine. I've got a cutting tool here, but you can use your poker as well, and I'm just adding some lines. So once I've got those textured, I am just going to press them in, and I have got 2 of them here. So I'm just going to press them on there, and a lot of tutorials that you see add a little ring around the bottom of them. I am just adhering them with my dotting tool, and I am just kind of moving this downward on the side, pressing that into the rest of the clay here. And it looks really good when it's done. You get great adherence, and you don't have to make extra pieces. And once I've got those adhered, I am just going to take this dotting tool and start adding some additional texture around them. Here they are, and these look great on just about any dragon piece. So, and once they're done, you can kind of fix those points, change the direction, go through and touch up the line work that you did on the outsides of them. Next up, we have wrinkled texture. So I am just starting with some pieces that I've rolled out and pointed on the ends, and I am just going to place them kind of like wrinkles would look. And this is really great texture for, around the underneath the eye, or in places like on the arms and legs and stuff, around the neck where you have those creases in the skin. And I am just laying these on here, and then I am going to smooth out the lower end of the strip here and kind of blend it into the rest of the piece. And once I've got those on there, I am just going to come in with my needle tool and add some additional lines. I'm starting right here at the bottom of these and just working my way down and curving those all kind of in the same direction. This is what it looks like. You can also create some actual wrinkled texture with a very thinly rolled piece of clay, and I am just going to fold this just like you would with a piece of cloth or paper and create those wrinkles as you're laying it down. This is what it looks like, and I did use that dotting tool to add some additional texture in here as well. Next, we have ridges. So again, I am just starting with a rolled piece with 2 pointed ends, and I am just making some straight lines all the way across and around this piece, rolling it on my finger. And these are really great for use, around the eyes or the mouth. This is what it looks like, and I am just going to place this on here, and the next texture is a kind of fur or tendril type texture, and it is also great for use around the eyes and the mouth and tends to pair best when placed right behind these type of ridges. So these are just small balls of clay that I have rolled out into some little pieces, and I am placing them just like we did with that spiky texture, except they're longer, and so I am going to kind of, move and curl them around so they look like they're flowing naturally. This is what it looks like, and all of these pair really well with any one of the scaly textures that we explored earlier. And to finalize today's video, I do have several examples here of different ways that you can kind of use and pair all of these textures together. So these are all pieces that I made kind of just playing around with these things. And if you're interested in learning how to make pieces like this, that is the best advice I can give you, is simply to sit down with your clay and your tools and start playing around with different textures and designs. That is it for today, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please visit my channel and check out my forest-themed dragon eye mug tutorial, or tune in every week on Wednesdays to see what's new on my channel. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next week.